Hello everyone and welcome to another Arthritis Help Movement Improvement session where you learn to move differently so you can feel better. I'm Dr. David Sofer, physical therapist, and today we're going to be talking about 11 different ways to sit. We're going to break up sitting into a bunch of different pieces, take notice of what our preferences are or what kind of movements maybe we have trouble with, and learn how to improve our contact with the chair, improve our support up against gravity, and how to be a little more resilient and hopefully more comfortable. At the same time, we'll be getting a great workout of the abdominals, and we're going to learn how to free up and improve flexibility and mobility in the hips, pelvis, and spine. So a lot of good that can be done from this one session. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our little check-in. All right, so you're going to wind up sitting in a firm chair without using the backrest. So you're just kind of sitting upright on your own, and we're just going to sit and see what position you land in. Don't try to be perfect, don't try to be military, right? You're just going to sit and see what your comfortable sitting position is. Our sitting postures change all the time. You just want to see where at this moment in time in this position you land. No ambition, just diagnostic, just seeing where we are. As we sit, first we're going to notice, is there any points of pain or strain or pressure? Anywhere where you feel a buildup of force or a buildup of pressure in parts of your body. For me, immediately it's kind of this lower mid-back area that I notice, but just kind of taking a sense. And the first thing I want you to put your awareness to positionally is your sit bones, where your backside or your pelvis makes contact with the surface. And so for just a little anatomy lesson, I'm going to bring in my friend Mr. Pelvis here. And as we're sitting on the chair, here we've got the pelvis. This is the front of the lumbar spine, the lowest part of the spine. These are the thigh bones and the hips, so the hips that move. And on the bottom, we have these two bony prominences called your ischial tuberosities. And those make contact with the surface. And you can see that as we're sitting, that we can be up and down, or we can be forward or back or side to side or twisted on those. And so we're just going to get a sense of where these, what I'm going to call our sit bones, are making contact with the surface of the chair. So that's what I want you thinking about, and that's just a visual for you if it makes it easier to visualize. So as you're seated, just get a sense of where you make contact. And if you feel like you are on dead center of those sit bones, or do you feel like you are a little bit in the front of the sit bones, or are you a little bit on the back half or back third of the sit bone? Are you so far back off the sit bones that you're actually resting on your tailbone? Are you so far forward that you're actually resting on the thigh bones? Doesn't matter where you are, you're just getting a sense of how you make contact, what your first inclination was. And then from there, we're going to think about the distribution of weight side to side. I want you to see, do you feel like you put a little bit more pressure through the right side of your sit bone, or a little bit more pressure through the left sit bone? Which one are you balanced even side by side, or do you get this little bit of shift to one side or a little bit of a tendency to put weight through the other side? So just get a sense of how you connect yourself. So we're seeing where we are front to back, and we're seeing where we are side to side. Then we're going to bring our attention down to our thighs and our knees. We're going to take a look at where the knees land, and do they happen to land a little bit in? Some people like to sit here, ladies very much. The guys tend to, man spread as they call it, but the women tend to be in through here, and there are a lot of social pressures that determine how we move. But see where your legs land, where you're comfortable. Okay, and then I want you to see in or out, and then we're going to take a look at the feet. And do the feet wind up turning in also? Are the feet to the outside of the knees? Are your feet back behind you? Where do you get that support from your feet onto the floor? So we're just seeing what is, we're just taking that check-in and seeing what your tendencies are. We always need to find out where we start, so that way at the end we can assess any changes we make to finish. Last, we're going to think about the knees. And I want you to think, does one knee feel like it's extended a little further than the other, or vice versa? If you can't tell, that's okay. That one's a little bit subtle, but just getting this sense. You have an easier time twisting one way or the other way. Okay, very good. Now that we've locked in and we've got that sense, we're going to start moving. We talked about 11 ways to sit, okay? So the first two we're going to work on are forward and back. So the first thing I want you to think of is we're going to elongate your body, keep your spine stiff, and we're just going to tilt forward and feel how the weight shifts off of the tailbone onto the front half or front third of the sit bones, maybe even the thigh, and a little weight comes onto your feet. And then we'll return. And then we're going to keep that spine stiff and we're going to lean back and we're going to feel how the weight comes onto the back half of the sit bone, maybe even the tailbone. And then the feet get light. They almost want to lift up as you keep your body rigid. And then we're going to return to center. Okay. Now we're going to unlock the body so we're not so rigid anymore. And what I want you to do is I want you to get really tall, or what you feels like tall. Lift your chest, lift your chin, lift your head, arch your back, and feel that when you do that, you wind up sitting on those front third or front half of the sits bones again. And then if you make yourself small, so if I were to put my hand on my head and squish you down, you're going to feel that you round kind of like a C or a crescent shape, and that the weight goes onto that back half of the sit bones. So we're going to practice rising up and falling down, and feeling how we can roll the pelvis forward and backwards as we do. So we've got this pelvis, and it's going to roll as you're going up. It's going to roll forward, and as you roll back, it's going to as you come down, it's going to roll backwards a little bit. Okay. So practice rising up, and then if we over-exaggerate, we wind up on the front third, and then if we come down and we squish, we wind up on the back third and tailbone. And let's just do that a few times and really think about the position of the shape of your sit bones into the surface, almost like you wanted to trace it in your mind. If you wanted to feel every contour and nuance of those bones, you're just rolling them, almost massaging them through the surface as you rise up and then as you fall down. Just getting a sense of what forward and back is and seeing if there's one way that really feels familiar to you or comfortable, or one way that feels maybe foreign or odd. And I want you to feel, if you're just moving through the pelvis, that you're allowing your chest and head and chin to fall as you come down, and chest and head and chin to rise as you come up. That you're not limiting yourself by just moving through the pelvis. It's actually a whole spine movement. Even the knees, as we come up, move forward, and then they pull backward a little bit as we come down. So feel that ability to move through the spine, up and down. Very good. So that's the front, that's one. And the back is two, and then we're going to find dead center, right? And that's number three. And that dead center is going to be your kind of tallest point, okay? That's always going to be our reset. That's going to be our home. That's where we come back to. So I go from the back to the front, and we just find where is that dead center. And from dead center, can we just press down into the surface to make the crown rise a little bit? And that's going to be a nice, resilient point for sitting for most people, the most comfortable way you can get to center. Then the next thing we're going to think about is side to side weight. So as you're sitting here, feel for the side that maybe feels a little bit heavier than the other. If I had to lift one side of your cheek, would you rather I lifted your left cheek or your right cheek up? Which one would be more readily? For me, I weight this right side more, so it's easier for me to lift my left. So I'm going to practice that. Just go to the side that feels a little bit easier to put weight on, shift into it, and shift your weight over. So now instead of going to the front of the sit bone, we're going to the side of the sit bone and then back to center. We're going to go to the side, and so all the weight is driven through that one sit bone and then back to center. And you should feel that as you put weight through that one sit bone, that you actually get a lift from the opposite side sit bone. And now people do this in very different ways, okay? Some people take their body stiff and they tilt their whole body over as one piece, and that's how they get there, right? And this is more of like a falling, right? So rather than being supported, we're just kind of leaning body weight and falling over that one side. And when that happens, usually the opposite leg lifts into the air. But there's another way that you can do this, and that is by pressing that side down. Rather than leaning on it, you press it down, and that makes the ribs and head and torso open. It creates a bit of a crescent shape into that side as you come. And when you do that, the opposite leg actually grounds to the floor. So we want to find that way that we can move sideways, but still ground the pelvis and find that nice C shape through the torso and through the ribs. Nice and slow, going in the direction that feels easiest for you, most comfortable for you. Good. And take a moment again to imagine that you were just trying to feel and sense all of the contours of your sit bones, that you are kind of getting this picture in your head of what that sit bone feels like, and you're really kind of tracing it or getting that impression into the surface. Good. Come back to reset, come back to center. Okay, and then we're going to go to the left or go to the opposite side. Whatever side you did, we're going to go to the other. For me, it's the left. And I'm going to see how can I press down that left side and lift the right. And when I do it, it's just the right is flows. It's like water, and the left, it's a little chunky. It's like molasses. It doesn't move quite as freely, readily, easily. So I'm going to make smaller movements for me, but you do what's right for you. And we're going to shift over and ground that side. And we're going to remember the two different ways to move, that if we keep the body rigid and we kind of tip over, that's more of a passive movement where we're just moving our body weight over that side. And when we do that, usually the opposite leg likes to lift. Or we can be active and we could press that side down, and that will open up the same side ribs and torso and side, and the opposite leg kind of pushes a little bit to help you ground the one side of the pelvis and lift the other side. And we'll just come back and forth, just getting a sense of how easily we can move through that center of the sit bone from right to left and left to right. Try to avoid any twisting or turning. Sometimes we'll get accessory motions in there that move us in other directions. We're just trying to stay in this plane. Imagine that I was divided straight down here by a plane of glass. I'd want to stay in that plane from side to side. So we'll press down. Good. Press that sit bone down, lift the ribs, lift the torso. Good. Feel your ability to ground the right side. Remember, don't do anything that's uncomfortable. Don't do anything that's unpleasant. What's rule number one? Rule number one, always be kind to yourself first. Always be kind to yourself. So if you're feeling something that's painful, make it smaller. Do less. Just do the first intention. Do the smallest point. I can still get, especially on this side for me, how can I do this with less effort? I feel like the hip muscles really want to kick in and stress a little bit. How can I figure out how to be soft or not lift this leg while I'm doing that? Good. Okay, so now we found forward 1, backward 2, center 3, side to side 4, 5. Now we're going to work on a little bit of a diagonal. Okay, so now we're in the reset point. This is a little bit tricky. All right, so we're in the dead center of our sit bones, and we're going to move. I'm going to move diagonally toward my right, and so I want to feel that I'm moving on a 45-degree angle over that right sit bone, and so it's bringing me up and over. Good. And back. We're going to try that again. And so you're going to find up and over that right sit bone. And as you come back to center, we're actually going to go down and back over the left sit bone. And that is tricky, that we're finding our way to go up to center and then not to the right, not to the side, not to the front, but down the diagonal of that sit bone. And when you do, you're going to feel that your torso turns a little bit, your chest lifts a little bit, your head lifts a little bit as you go through. And then as we come back, we're going to come back down on that diagonal until we get to center. And then we're going to go on the backwards diagonal to the other sit bone where we're a little bit slouched and a little bit C-shaped. And to move into that direction for me is a little bit tricky. I don't mind being up and out to the right. This is my tendency, right? This is just me, what I do. You see what's inside yourself. And as you come back, I have a little bit of trouble sinking my ribs and my torso into this back position, into that kind of left-sided tailbone, left-sided sit bone area. Good. I'm going to practice that a couple more times, diagonally through, feeling my chest expand, my ribs expand, my head almost looking up, feeling the crease in that right hip deepen. And then as I come back, the head comes down, the chest comes down. Can I sink? Can I allow my back and my ribs to fall? Find that back sit bone as we come through. Very nice. Okay, we'll come back to center. And now we went one diagonal, so we have to go on the other diagonal. So let's check that out. We're going to go forward to the left, or the opposite side that you just did, and forward, and feel how easy it is to come forward over that side. in the diagonal, so not to the side, not to the front, but in the diagonal, and then come back and find that back seat, and we sink into that back seat. Good. And let's find our way diagonally forward. Feel the chest rise, feel the chin rise, feel the eyes, the gaze looks up. We find our way over that side. How easy is it to bring our body over in that diagonal? And then can we find our way back down? And this one's interesting in the knees. Don't forget your base, that you want to have your body, and since you're moving forward, that you want to have this foot solidly under your body. If that knee is in or it falls out, it's going to be difficult to find that nice base to move. So make sure that you're finding a nice happy home for that side as you're coming forward. And then we're going to come back. Good. And just one more time, bring it up. And then tracing that sit bone, feeling that contour into the surface. Fine when we get back to center in the reset point, and then back to the back down, and then to center. Very good. Okay. And so for the next set, we're going to think about rotation. So we've been working on kind of side, side, front, back, diagonals, but now we're going to think a little bit about twisting, which is a little bit different. And so the twist, it's hard to consider the twist by thinking about the sit bones, so we're going to consider the twist by thinking about the knees. And I'm going to start with the right knee, and can I extend my right knee longer than my left knee? Right? If I take that right knee and I just move it and kind of strive it forward, not actually lifting the leg or anything, the feet are staying down, but striving that knee forward, what it's going to do, it's going to take this front bone of my pelvis right here if I'm sitting, if I got Mr. Pelvis here, this bone right here, these front bones, and that's going to come forward. As the knee comes forward, that will come forward, and then the opposite will come backward, and the hip will come back. And then we'll come back to center. And feel how easy can we draw one thigh forward as the other thigh draws back into us, and feel how that's going to turn the torso and come back. And so just get a sense, can you draw through one way and then just back to center? Don't go in the other direction, just go back to center. And we're just going to practice that. And notice that when you do that, it's going to turn your pelvis to the left if you're elongating your right leg, which should turn your belly button, should turn your breastbone, should turn your head, should turn your eyes. So you should feel like you're turning your body, okay? And so if you had to say, look behind you, right? You would want that pelvis to be able to turn so you could turn and look behind you. If the pelvis stayed static, all the turning would have to come from the neck or the torso. So if you can't freely move your pelvis, it could create actual neck problems when you turn because you're stuck always turning everything from the head. This is all I can turn my head. But if I move my pelvis, suddenly I can turn my head another 30 degrees, okay? So it's all about making all the movements easier. So we're bringing that right thigh forward, left thigh back, feeling the pelvis turn, feeling the belly button turn, feeling the breastbone turn, feeling the torso turn, even the head turn. Good. Come back to center. Finally, we're going to take the left knee and we're going to strive that left knee forward and feel yourself draw the right knee back and feel the front of the pelvis bones, that you're moving the left pelvis bone forward and drawing the right pelvis bone back, and then come back. Good. Nice and easy. Feel the pelvis turn and feel how that connects and flows through the rest of the body. When I turn to my left, by elongating the right, I do that very easily. It's like water, like butter, no problem. When I go to the left, it feels like I'm swimming upstream a little bit. So I got to figure out, why doesn't my torso, my pelvis, why don't things want to turn? And that doesn't mean I need to push harder to get there, right? We want to work in ease. Everything is about making things easier. So if something's harder, don't do more, do less. That is one of the most difficult concepts to grasp and embody, is that when something's difficult, do less, not more. Explore, be curious. How do we make the first 10% of that movement simpler? How do we make that first 10% easier to create the whole rest? If we start on the right path, we will finish on the right path. If we start off and then add force, we're just moving with more intensity down a more difficult road. Okay, so feel that left knee wants to strive forward, right knee drives back, the pelvis turns, and feel the body turn with it. Nice and easy, good. Now we're actually going to do this one in both directions, so we're going to feel ourselves turn to the left and turn to the right, and just feeling that we can loosen up the pelvis, and feel how important this movement would be for anything that requires head turns. Driving, I don't know, watching a tennis match, anything where you're turning your head one side or the other. Okay, even conversation. Very good. And relax. Okay. All right, let's settle in and recheck in with ourselves and find those sit bones, right? And see if just by moving around in all those directions, right, do you feel like you're a little bit more in that center, right? Do you feel that you're finding a little bit more of that reset point in that center? Does it feel a little bit easier to be taller, a little bit easier to be upright, a little bit easier to resist the downward forces of gravity that are acting upon you? Good. Just take a moment, see where your legs land. See where your pelvis lands. See how your body lines up. Are you more evenly distributed left to right? It's okay if you're not. We've only done it one time. It's your first time. But a lot of times you can feel these changes pretty immediately, or sometimes need a little more time to understand what you're feeling. But it's great. With practice, it only gets better and better. Okay, so for the last thing that we're going to do, that was all our 11 moves, right? We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What did I miss? Oh, diagonal, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then dead center, that's our 11. And then for a finishing flourish, right, a little bonus, we're just going to make a nice circle. So you're going to imagine that you're sitting on a clock, and you're going to move towards 12 o'clock, which is going to be nice and upright. And then we're going to just move towards 1 o'clock, where we're going over that sit bone, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4, 5, and then 6 is going to be that full kind of slouchy position, which I know very well when I'm sitting on the couch. And then 7, 8, 9 is that out to the left. Remember, not tipping, but pressing that sit bone down. 10, 11, 12, back to the front. 12 isn't where we want to live. We want to live dead center in the middle of that clock, not towards any of the numbers, but it's just good to find that movement. I'm going to do that again one more time around the clock clockwise. I'm going to go 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. And I feel right where things get tough for me. Oh, I'm right in this 6, 7, 8 o'clock range. It's just tough for my body to move in that direction. 9, but then as we come around the front, I feel a little bit easier. And then back to center. I'm going to go counterclockwise now, 12, 11, 10. So I'm going to start 12, 11, 10. And we're going to take it nice and slow and feel what it feels like. And go at a pace that feels interesting for you. Always challenge yourself to take it a little bit slow as you go around, because really you can't sense when we're moving quickly. We can't really appreciate the movements when we're kind of speeding around. It's like speed reading versus, taking your time to really understand what's going on. But then after you do that, if you want to just have a little fun with it, you want to kind of go around and feel for all the movements of the body as you go, and go around the other way to get this nice looseness. Speed is okay too, but to make changes and to be aware, we want to be slower and thoughtful. All right, we're going to finish in dead center on those sit bones, appreciating how we're sitting, feeling the height, feeling maybe some of the fatigue, right? It didn't feel like we did much, but we might be tired in some of these muscles in the back, in the hips, in the abs. I know I start to feel it. And just feel how strong and resilient you are to those downward forces of gravity. And feel that you're in your most powerful, comfortable sitting position. That's perfect. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed this session. And don't forget to thank yourselves for taking the time and making the effort to make the changes, to do the things that are going to make you feel better, that are going to make you good in the long run. It is not easy. Not everyone does it. So take a moment to appreciate yourself for that. You can see all my videos on my website, www.arthritishelp.info, I-N-F-O, right on the screen. And I will see you next week with a whole new video teaching you how to move differently so you can feel better. Take care, everyone.